kingship had become a shadow without substance. At this stage, though there was still a pretense of succession in order of primogeniture, this practice in practice this was disregarded, and the pyral hierarchy elected the king who would serve them best. Alright, so um, as you can see, we were very special back then. We had a very special kingdom. Whatever we touch just turns to gold. Which of course we were going off back then, but it goes to show you once again that these people are the Judites. The West African man, for sure, Israel. They're not just Judah, but the other nations, not other nations, other tribes mixed in there, but mostly Judah. Samuel also said unto Shaul, "The Lord sent me to anoint thee to be." Oh wait, no, this is not it. Matthew 5:13. "Ye are the salt of the earth, but the salt had lost its flavor. Wherewith shall it be salted? It is thenceforth good for nothing, but to be cast down and trodden under foot of men. Ye are the light of words. You are the light of the world. A city that is set on a hill cannot be hid. Neither do men light a candle and put it under a bushel, but on a candlestick, and it giveth light to all that are in the house. Let your light go so shine before men, so that they may see your good works and glorify your Father which is in heaven." Once again, we Israelites were a special kind of people. We take ourselves very seriously. When you go back to the beginning of this lecture, we're a very special kind of people. We're very serious. We take ourselves seriously. And you can see that on SNL where they say, "Oh, black people take themselves so seriously. Oh, you can't take a joke. Oh, you don't like when people say the N-word," because we're naturally like that. We're not people who joke and laugh at our at where we come from, or laugh and make fun of our people. Which you have some wicked Israelites that do that, but even the most base level Jake knows that it's not right to go make fun of the land and the nation for which he comes from. You won't hear them call themselves or let other people of other nations call themselves the N-word, which is a whole lot of hypocrisy because they allow their fellow brothers to call themselves the N-word, which is absolute madness. But once again, this all goes to show you that we're very special people. No other people like us exist on the earth. And we're going to continue reading. "The original democratic form of government was thus re-established under a king with strictly limited powers. In religion, the ancestor of the king became the object of national worship." Doesn't that also sound like Xerxes the God King from Babylon, from that Persian Babylon from 300? We kind of just took those stories that we heard of, and we kind of adopted them, which was of course going off because "thou shalt have no other gods before me," which you can read that in Exodus. And here we are making God kings, which man is not God. We are sons of God, which you can read about that in here. Yep. "It came to pass when men began to multiply in Genesis chapter 6 verse 1. "It came to pass when men began to multiply in the face of the earth, and daughters were born unto them, the sons of God. So the daughters of women so the daughters of men that they were fair, and they took them wives of all which they choose. And the Lord said, My spirit shall not always strive with man, for that he is also flesh, and his days shall be 120 years." Once again, back then we are still the sons of God, but we started to sleep with women, with the women of the world, which is not saying that we actually were taking them wives, because we knew not to marry women of other nations. We were just using for concubines, using for our pleasure, and keep them around. They just smell nice and do what they got to do whenever we ask them to. All right, so moving on. All right. The original democratic form of government was thus reestablished under a king with strictly limited powers. In religion, the ancestor of the king became the object of national worship, while the clan ancestors lost nothing of their importance in the eyes of their own descendants. For the oligarchy, a figurehead was provided, as no distinction had ever been made between the executive and judicial powers. Another instance was added to the tribunals in the king as supreme judge. But as before, differences between individuals continued to be tried by the head of the smallest social unit to which both litigants belong. Members of the same family resorted to the father, as of old. Those of the same... Someone knocking on the door. Give me a second. Oh, okay, it was nothing. Okay, members of the same family resorted to the father, as if old. Those of the same extended household to the patriarch. Those are the same clans of the clan chief. The king came into action as the highest court of appeal, or in those cases when the contending parties belonged to distinct clans. In the latter case, it served the useful purpose of arranging judicially such differences which, previous to his advent, could only be adjusted by a clash of arms. Land tenure, which had always been communal. But actually, going back to that clash of arms, I can't just go over that. So the king came into action at the highest court of appeal in those cases when the contending parties belonged to distinct clans. He said the only use for arranging judicially such differences which, previous to his advent, can only be adjusted by a clash of arms. Which it seems, like they're trying to say that kings were the highest court of appeal. Which of course, you see that, you can see that in the scriptures. When kings were brought up, they'd be brought up to the central judge and before the king. And you see that with the king of Amalek in 1 Samuel. It was brought before Samuel and King Saul. He of course, did a very high crime. Of course, Amalek is our chief enemy, one of our chief enemies. So it makes sense that we would bring them to the highest level, to the highest court, to be slain, which is what happened to him. He was cut into pieces before Yahweh, which had always been communal, suffered no alterations. Land was vested in the ancestors and administered in gradation by the clan chief. That the household, the paterfamilias, reaching finally, once again, land tenure. We had that. Our ancestors had land tenure. We could read about that in, of course, 1 Samuel. Nabal's family had his home, and he owned that entire plot of land, which is how it's supposed to go. You're supposed to have land, and it's supposed to be owned by ancestors and passed down through generation to generation. You can read about that all throughout the Bible. Abraham, he owned land. He had servants and he had land. Lot had his servants and he had land. The head of the family, the paterfamilias, reaching finally the usufructuary cultivator. Now the king was interposed between the clan chiefs and ancestors, in whose name he assumed the superior trusteeship. The trustee, the king, could never alienate the land, and as the crown land compromised every inch within his kingdom, such a thing as unowned or vacant land could never exist in the West Coast. Part ownership in the heritage of an ancestral land was a sine qua non, which means, essential form of citizenship. A person who had no share in it had no civic status. He was a slave, which of course we had that as well. Someone who didn't own land, they were a servant. And of course we had the Jubilee, where they were let go every 7 years, I believe. Of course we had our own rules considering servants and slaves. We didn't beat our slaves, we didn't abuse them. Of course we let our slaves go after some time, and we had a ring. We put a ring through their nose if they wanted to serve us and they wanted to be our servant forever. All right, I'm going to close off and come right back.